I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your sinister host. And tonight, you'll hear the chilling tale of a Texas farmer who dared to challenge a legend, and the monstrous truth that clawed its way into his life. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. The morning was quiet in DeWitt County, Texas, a flat, dusty stretch of ranch land carved between scrubby mesquite trees and sun-baked fields. I'd lived on that land all my life. My name's Frank Halstead. I run cattle on 200 acres that belonged to my father and his father before him. People say nothing much happens around here, but they're wrong. Something did happen. Something that never should have walked under the sun. It began on a Tuesday, early March. Temperature had dipped into the low 40s overnight. I stepped outside just before sunrise to check the pens. That's when I saw her, Ellie, one of my best heifers, torn apart like a goddamn sack of rags. Her neck looked crushed, her stomach opened clean down the middle. Blood had soaked into the red dirt so deep it had turned to mud. At first I thought it was coyotes, maybe a stray mountain lion. But the wounds didn't match. They were too deep, too deliberate. It was surgical. I saw tracks near her body. Four-legged, wide-pawed, sunk deep. Whatever it was heavy. I followed them around the pen, across the grass. Then the prints changed, no longer paws. They turned into feet, human feet, long and narrow, with claw marks trailing from the toes. The hairs on my arms stood up like someone had whispered behind me. It wasn't just the tracks. There was a smell, something animal, musky and bitter, but under it, a hint of rot, like roadkill left too long under the sun. I didn't tell anyone that morning. Folks around here don't go in for ghost stories. I figured maybe I was overtired. Maybe it was a man, some psycho who'd been living rough and snapped. But that night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those damn footprints, like something between a man and a beast. I sat on the porch with my old Winchester across my lap, watching the line where the fields met the tree line. The stars were out, cold wind moving the grass. At 2:14 a.m., the cows stirred. Not a stampede, just a tension. I could hear their low sounds, the kind they make when they're nervous. Then came a sound I can't unhear. Not quite a growl, not a howl. Something low, dragging through the air, half animal, half human. It raised every hair on my body. I gripped the gun tighter. The next morning, another cow was dead. Same wounds, same blood trail. This time it was closer to the house. Too close. I called Sheriff Cardenas. He's a good man, skeptical as hell, but he's seen enough strange things in Texas to keep an open mind. He drove up the next day, looked over the carcass, took some photos. He found the same tracks I did. We followed them to the edge of the woods. Same pattern. Four-legged, then two. Could be a big cat, he said. But those foot tracks? I don't know, Frank. You ever seen a bobcat with size 12 boots? I asked. He didn't answer. Later that week, it happened to the Bakers. They lived 5 miles west of me. Their young son found the family dog gutted on the back porch. No signs of struggle. Just entrails and a wide streak of blood leading off into the fields. People started whispering. Skinwalkers, some said. Devil dogs. One old ranch hand said it was a chupacabra. All folklore. All nonsense, I used to think. But that thing wasn't a legend. It was real. And it was hunting. After the third attack, I started sleeping with a rifle at my side. I knew it would be back. I didn't know when, but I could feel it. Like the way you feel a storm before it breaks. One night, 3 days after the last kill, I heard something outside the barn. It wasn't the cattle. They were dead silent. That's what scared me. The silence. I grabbed the flashlight and crept toward the barn. The air smelled like rust and sweat. I opened the door slowly. Inside, something had broken into the feed room. Sacks torn apart, claw marks in the wood, blood on the walls. But no animals, just a chunk of something lying in the corner. I picked it up with the edge of my shirt. It was fur, black, coarse, and stank like a wet corpse. The smell hit me like a punch in the chest. As I stood there, something moved in the rafters. A creak, then another. I aimed the flashlight upward and caught a glimpse of something slipping into the shadows. Something big, bigger than a man. I didn't sleep that night, and I knew then. This wasn't just a predator. It wasn't just passing through. It was watching us, studying us, waiting. 3 nights passed. The creature didn't come back. Or if it did, it stayed hidden. The air over the ranch hung thick, heavy with anticipation, like the ground itself was holding its breath. During the day, I tried to keep things normal, mending fences, checking troughs. I even turned the radio back on in the kitchen, hoping the country tunes might keep the dread out of the walls. But I was jumpy. Every shadow that moved, every creak in the floorboards after dark, my mind twisted it into claws, fangs, something inhuman lurking just outside the light. On the 4th morning, I got a call from Pastor Willard. Something had broken into the cemetery behind the old chapel outside of town. He said it looked like someone had dug into one of the fresh graves, a teenager named Cody Hess, who died in a car accident 2 weeks earlier. I drove out there just before noon. The sheriff was already there, pacing around the hole with a sour look on his face. The grave was half collapsed, dirt thrown around like something had clawed its way in, not out. That's what got to me. The way the soil was scattered. The direction of the markings. They weren't digging a body up. They were covering something. You thinking what I'm thinking? The sheriff muttered. I nodded. Yeah, and I don't like it. We found bones, fresh ones, tucked under the displaced soil, not from a human. Small, broken femurs, ribs snapped clean down the middle, cattle bones. Someone, or something, is leaving trophies, I said. That, or a nest, the sheriff said grimly. We both turned as the pastor crossed himself and backed away, whispering prayers. That night, I set up motion sensors along the edge of the property, bought a trail cam from Bass Pro in Victoria, and mounted it on an old oak near the fence line. Loaded the Winchester. Cleaned it twice. Still couldn't shake the thought that whatever this thing was, it knew we were trying to find it. And it didn't care. At 3:41 a.m., the sensor lights tripped. I was up before the alarm even finished buzzing. Grabbed the rifle and flashlight, heart pounding like a jackhammer. Out in the yard, the air was ice cold. The cows were restless, shifting near the back fence, eyes wide in the dark. I moved slow. Every step felt too loud. The sensor lights had tripped near the south gate. I scanned the area. Nothing. Then I turned toward the woods, and that's when I saw it. Just for a second. Eyes. 2 glowing yellow orbs hovering low to the ground, about 20 feet beyond the fence. They weren't reflecting light. They were generating it, like the thing behind them was alive in a way nothing should be. I raised the rifle, aimed, but by the time my finger touched the trigger, the eyes vanished. I didn't sleep. I sat on the porch till dawn, the rifle across my knees. When I checked the trail cam that morning, the footage was corrupted, static, like someone had rubbed a magnet across the card. But one frame survived. Just one. A silhouette, hunched, long-limbed, impossibly tall. Its head was angled unnaturally to the side like it was aware of the camera. watching me watching it. The sheriff came back out around noon. When I showed him the footage, he didn't say anything at first. Then he sat down on the back of his truck and said, "I think this thing is choosing you." I stared at him. Choosing me? Marking you. Stalking you. Maybe it's territorial. Maybe it sees you as a threat or prey. "I don't plan on being prey," I said. "We decided to bring in backup, not official. Just 3 of the old-timers from around the area. Ranchers like me, men who'd seen too much to laugh off talk of monsters. They came armed, quiet, and dead serious. That evening, we set a trap. We left a fresh-killed goat, roadkill, chained to a tree near the back pasture. One of the men, Wayne Morris, had a night vision scope. The rest of us were stationed around the perimeter, waiting. The moon was bright. Windless. At 2:06 a.m., the goat started to shift. Not twitch, shift. Something had grabbed it, but the chain didn't move. There was no sound of struggle. Wayne whispered over the radio, "Something's crouching next to it. I can't see clearly. It's static." Then nothing. I ran toward his position, found his rifle on the ground. The scope cracked in half, blood on the leaves. We found Wayne 50 feet away, half submerged in a drainage ditch, still breathing, but barely. His chest was torn open, ribs visible, claw marks that went through flesh like butter. His last words before he passed out were, "It stood up, looked at me, smiled." That night I realized something that turned my stomach inside out. It wasn't hunting just to feed, it was playing. Wayne survived the night, but barely. The doctors in Cuero said he'd need multiple surgeries if he even made it through the next few days. I sat by his hospital bed for 2 hours while he lay unconscious, breathing shallow, with tubes running into every part of him. The sheriff came in around dawn, dark circles under his eyes. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Whatever that thing is," he said, "it's not acting like an animal. It's punishing." I didn't respond. I was still thinking about the way Wayne described it. It stood up, looked at me, smiled. Not many things smile after opening a man's chest. Back at the ranch, I found something worse. In the dirt outside my porch, right where I always sat, someone had carved a symbol. I say someone because no animal I know can trace a near-perfect circle into hard-packed soil with a jagged crescent shape through the center. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. A message. It knew where I slept, where I waited. It had walked right up to my house and left its mark. And I hadn't even heard it. The air that day felt wrong. Oppressive, like the atmosphere before a tornado. My livestock refused to leave the barn. The dogs wouldn't stop whining. Even the birds had gone silent, as if the land itself had sensed what was coming. I called the sheriff again. He didn't answer. I tried to reach the other 2 men who had helped us the night Wayne was attacked. Both lines went straight to voicemail. I drove to Gary Doyle's ranch first. The gate was hanging off its hinges. His cattle were still in the field, untouched. But the barn door had been ripped from its frame. I found Gary in the hayloft, curled into a ball. Alive, but not all there. His clothes were torn, his skin covered in scratches and welts. He couldn't speak, just stared past me, muttering the same thing over and over. It watched me all night. It never blinked. He hadn't been physically attacked, not like Wayne. But something had been done to him. Psychological warfare. That thing had gotten inside his head and broken something. When I returned home, there was a message on my front door, scrawled in blood. 3 words, "You're next." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with every light on, the rifle loaded and ready, and the chain lock bolted on every door. I thought about running, about packing the truck and heading north. maybe as far as Colorado. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't matter. This thing wasn't bound by fences or state lines. It didn't want my land. It wanted me. And then came the night. It finally came through the front door. It was 3:17 a.m. I heard the hinges on the front gate squeal, and then silence. A stillness so complete, I felt it in my bones. My dogs didn't bark. My wind chimes didn't move. The air was dead. Then came the creak of wood under weight. My porch steps. I stood behind the door, rifle aimed, finger on the trigger. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. Then a voice, low, hoarse, barely human. "Frank, let me in." I froze. My lungs locked up, because the voice, it was my father's. He'd been dead for 7 years. I didn't open the door, not until the sun came up. When I did, I found more claw marks, deep, gouged into the wood just inches from the lock. My father's voice had been bait, a mimic. This thing wasn't just a predator. It could learn. It could deceive. I realized I was out of time. It wasn't just coming after me anymore. It was inside my mind. After the mimicry, the voice at the door, I knew I was facing something beyond natural law, a creature that could observe, copy, and use my memories against me. I drove into Cuero before sunrise, eyes scanning every rearview mirror like I was being hunted. I stopped at a diner, trying to force down black coffee with shaking hands. That's when an old man sat at my table without asking. "You Halstead's boy?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "You know my father?" He didn't answer. Just reached into his coat and pulled out a manila folder. Thick, stained. I didn't ask how he knew who I was. "I saw what left those tracks," he said. "About 40 years ago, up near Goliad. We called it a wilderness echo, something that walks between man and beast, not just a werewolf, worse, older." My stomach twisted. "How do you kill it?" He stared at me with one milky eye. "You don't. Not unless it wants to die. And even then, it takes more than bullets." I opened the folder. Inside were old photographs. Bodies torn in half, livestock shredded. A few newspaper clippings about animal attacks, all dated decades back. All within 100 miles of my ranch. "These things don't just feed," he said. "They choose. Attach themselves to places, bloodlines. Some say they're cursed men. Others say they're the curse itself." I flipped to the last page. A grainy black and white photo. A young man, barely out of his 20s, standing with a group of ranchers. My father. I recognized the scar on his hand, but it was the man beside him that made my breath catch. It was me. No, not exactly. But the resemblance was undeniable. A distant relative, a mirror image from another time. "What the hell is this?" I whispered. "Some things run in the blood," the old man said. "That thing out there, it knows who you are, what you are. That's why it chose you." I slammed the folder shut. "So what do I do? Just wait to die?" He shook his head. "You prepare. You dig deep. You find something older than fear. Something that thing can't mimic." As I stood to leave, he grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Silver won't be enough. You need remembrance. That's what burns them. Memory. Truth. Something sacred." It sounded like nonsense, but I didn't care. I'd try anything. Back home, I went through everything my father left behind. Old hunting rifles, military gear, family Bibles. I found a rusted crucifix beneath the floorboards of his room, wrapped in cloth. He must have hidden it for a reason. That night, I didn't set traps. I didn't run. I stood in the middle of the field, rifle across my chest, crucifix in one hand, and I waited. At exactly 3 a.m., the fog rolled in, thick, wet, clinging to everything. And from that fog, a shape emerged. Long arms, backward bent legs, head cocked to the side like it had no spine. It stepped forward, silent, until I saw its face. It was mine. My exact face, my mouth, my eyes, and it smiled. But not with malice, with hunger. "I am you," it whispered. "I am what you forget." I raised the crucifix and shouted, "You're not me." And for the first time, it recoiled. The fog hissed. The creature backed away, not in fear but in confusion, as if I'd spoken in a language it hadn't heard in centuries. It vanished into the mist and left behind a trail of ash, not blood, ash. In the days that followed the encounter in the fog, I kept the crucifix close. I didn't understand why it worked, only that it did. The creature hadn't expected resistance, not from me, not from someone who was supposed to be prey, but it had left something behind besides ash. My dreams changed. They weren't nightmares. They were memories, but not mine. Running on all fours through wet leaves, tearing into warm flesh, watching a man scream with blood in his throat and no hope in his eyes. Every time I woke, I found myself covered in sweat, breath ragged, heart racing like I'd just come back from a hunt. The dreams were so vivid I could taste the blood. I told myself it was stress, trauma, but a part of me, the old part, the part that had seen death and gutted deer with my bare hands, that part knew something had changed. I was connected to it now. That crucifix hadn't just scared the creature off, it had wounded it. And maybe, through that wound, something passed between us. I tried burning the symbol it carved into the porch. It came back the next day, perfectly redrawn, with dead insects arranged around it like an offering. The smell of rot was worse now, not just outside, inside, in my clothes, my walls, my skin. I called the sheriff again. No answer. I drove to town. His office was locked, his cruiser was gone, his mailbox overflowing. No one had seen him in 3 days. I checked the hospital. Wayne Morris had died the night before. Complications, they said. But his body was already gone, transferred by government personnel that no one could name. Everything was unraveling. The people who helped me, gone. The only thing I had left was a house that no longer felt like home, and a face in the dark that wore my own. I stayed up every night, watching, waiting. And the worst part, I started wanting it to come back. There was a hunger growing in me, a whisper at the back of my skull that said, "You could be stronger, faster, free." I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The only person who might have believed me was my father, and he was 6 feet under, unless whatever was out there was telling the truth about bloodlines, about curses that lived in bone. On the 7th night, I found something on my property I hadn't seen before. A den, not dug like a coyote hole, built, constructed from bones and tree limbs, with strips of hide woven into the walls. Inside, the smell was unbearable, a mixture of decay and musk and something chemical like burned hair. And at the center, hanging from a rusted hook nailed to an oak, was a photograph. Old, faded, me as a boy. Standing beside my father, on the back scrawled in black marker, "We are memory." I ran. I don't remember driving home. I only remember locking the doors and collapsing on the floor, clutching the crucifix until my knuckles turned white. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid of the creature, but because I was afraid it was already inside me. The line between night and day started to blur. I'd wake in places I didn't remember walking to, by the cattle trough, behind the barn, once even in the woods near the east fence. My boots were always muddy, my shirt soaked with sweat. But the rifle was untouched, still lying across the kitchen table where I'd left it the night before. I stopped eating. I stopped shaving. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. But I couldn't leave. Something tethered me to that land. Not fear, not even anger anymore. Obligation. If I ran, it would follow. And maybe this time it wouldn't stop with cattle or ranchers. Maybe it would go into town. Maybe it already had. I went back to the cemetery where the grave had been torn open weeks earlier. Cody Hess's grave. It had been filled again. But the headstone was missing. I searched the surrounding woods for 2 hours before I found it. Propped up in a small clearing like a marker, surrounded by bones. Human. Animal. Hard to say. And in the center, dug into the dirt, was a pit. Deep, black, alive with movement. Something was nesting. The old man from the diner had said it was more than a predator. It was an echo. A thing that came back again and again. But now, it wasn't just echoing fear. It was spreading. And maybe I was the next conduit. Back at the ranch, I took out the family Bible. Not for prayer, for records. My father's handwriting filled the margins with dates and names and odd notations. One line stood out. August 1972, James Halstead. Symptoms began. Mark appeared. I turned the page and froze. There, sketched in faded pencil, was the same symbol that had been carved into my porch. The jagged crescent. The circle. It wasn't just watching us. It had always been with us. That night I lit a fire out by the barn. Burned the photo. Burned the den. But the ashes didn't stay put. The wind picked up out of nowhere and scattered them in a perfect circle around the fire pit. And in the flames, I swear, I saw myself. Not just a reflection, a version, hair longer, eyes wild, skin stretched over bones like leather on wire. And it was grinning. I screamed until my throat went raw. Not because I was afraid of what I saw, but because some part of me recognized it. The thing outside was no longer hunting me. It was waiting for me to join it. The next full moon rose red. I hadn't seen a sky that color in years, soaked in crimson like the clouds themselves were bleeding. The moonlight hit the fields like a wound opening in the sky. That night, I didn't wait indoors. I brought the crucifix, a hunting knife, and 6 bullets I had poured myself, each laced with melted silver from my mother's wedding ring. It had to end, not because I believed I'd survive, but because if I didn't face it now, I'd never be me again. The thing had already started to whisper in my thoughts. It didn't speak in words, just impressions, hunger, freedom, rage. It wasn't trying to possess me. It was trying to make me understand. And that terrified me more than death. I stood in the open field, heart steady. The wind had died. No animal sounds, no night birds, not even insects. Just stillness and a weight in the air that pressed down like gravity had tripled. Then it stepped out of the trees. 7 feet tall, arms too long, fingers ending in curved claws, eyes gold and endless. Its skin, not fur, was stretched tight, like something wearing its own nerves on the outside. It moved silently until it was 10 feet away. Then it spoke, but not aloud. Its mouth didn't move. The voice was inside my skull. "You see now?" I didn't answer. You feel it, the pull, the blood. I raised the rifle. "You're not blood. You're infection." It cocked its head, as if amused. "I am your inheritance." It rushed me. I fired. The bullet caught it in the chest, knocking it back, but it didn't fall. Smoke rose from the wound, sizzling. It roared, not in pain but fury. I fired again, and again. Every silver shot hit center mass. Every shot slowed it down, but nothing stopped it. When I tried to reload, it was already on me. Its claws tore through my side like paper. I fell hard, gun knocked from my grip. The crucifix slid from my pocket. It loomed over me, mouth inches from my face. Hot breath, like wet copper. "You are mine," it said. "No," I gasped, reaching for the chain. I pressed the cross to its chest. It screamed. The sound not made by lungs, but by the world. The trees shook, the sky twisted, and for a moment I saw its true face. Not just beast, not man, something between. Something caught in a place it hated. I drove the blade into its ribs, not to kill, but to anchor the crucifix. It staggered back, smoke rising from its flesh. "You forgot," I said. But I remembered. It collapsed to its knees, not dead, changing. Its face shifted. To mine, then to my father's, then to 100 others I didn't know but somehow recognized. Souls who had fought it. Souls who had lost. I raised the rifle one last time, muzzle pressed to its heart. "This ends with me." I pulled the trigger. It didn't scream. It smiled and fell. Its body didn't bleed. It burned. And as the fire consumed it, I felt a piece of me tear loose. A weight I didn't know I'd carried. A scream escaped my throat. But it wasn't fear. It was release. The creature was gone. But something else had awakened. The sheriff never came back. The old man from the diner disappeared too. His number disconnected. His house abandoned. It was as if the land had swallowed everyone who ever dared to know too much. I buried what was left of the creature, or what I could find. A heap of scorched bones and blackened ash beneath the oak tree where the den once stood. I poured rock salt into the soil. Holy water, too. Didn't know if it would matter, but it felt like something sacred should be done. Something final. The ranch has been quiet since. No tracks, no gutted livestock, no whispers in the dark. But I haven't slept. Not really. Some nights I hear it still. Not outside, but in my bones. A hum under the surface of things. Like a voice just below hearing, asking me to remember, asking me to let go. The worst part is that some mornings I wake up stronger, faster, with dreams I can't explain and instincts that don't feel like mine. I think I left something behind in that field when I killed it. Or maybe I brought something back. I don't know. But I've kept the silver blade close, and the crucifix stays around my neck. The government men never showed. No black suits, no cover-up. But I think that's because they already know. They don't clean up the mess, they wait and watch. And sometimes when the balance tips too far, they let someone like me pick up the rifle. I've started carving marks into the barn wall, not tallying kills, just dates. Nights I felt it breathing nearby. The land seems to remember. The cattle get restless before the wind changes. The trees lean in closer, the shadows get heavier. Something always comes back. That's what no one tells you about killing monsters. It doesn't end the story, it continues it. Through scars, through silence, through men like me, waiting in the dark with silver in our hands, and something else, something darker, waiting just beneath the skin. So if you're hearing this, if you've seen the eyes, if you've followed the tracks that start as paws and end as feet, load your weapon, mark the door, and do not forget who you are. Because forgetting, that's how it begins. Frank's ordeal on that cursed Texas ranch is a brutal reminder that some bloodlines carry more than just history. They carry the hunger of things long buried. The nightmare may have burned, but the ashes still breathe. And this is far from over. If this tale gripped you with dread, hit like, and tell us in the comments. What part haunted you most? Share this video with someone who thinks werewolves are just myths. They deserve to know what stalks the night. And if you're bold enough to face what waits in the shadows, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and ring the bell. It might be the only protection you have when the next monster comes.